agenda item, which is introducing our new principal at the North Education Center, a familiar face to many of us who have had the great joy of visiting North. And I think you've been to board meetings in the past as well. So to do the formal honors, I'm going to pass things over to Ben McGrath.
Board Chair Bracke, members of the board, Superintendent Dowd. Thanks for giving us a few minutes tonight. Really excited as well to present our new principal at North Education Center, Aslan Dwyer. Aslan's been with us for the past 4 years as an assistant principal over at North. She's held various positions in the past prior to coming to Intermediate District 287, including an ESP in Intermediate District 916. That journey from ESP to principal, no doubt, speaks to her commitment to her profession, her student-centered work, and in general, her hard work to be successful for not just herself, but the students and families and communities that she serves. I'm confident that Aslan's hard work and commitment to her profession and to the students that we serve in our district will bring good things to our district and the students, families, and community at North Education Center. And with that, I'd like to invite Aslan to share a few words.
I told Ben I was going to wing it, but then I got really nervous, so I wrote something down. Thank you so much for having me and welcoming me tonight. I'm truly so honored to get to continue to lead and serve the NEC community in this new role. I feel super supported by the district leadership and also the other principals. They've just welcomed me with open arms and already have been mentors to me. I'm also super confident in my admin team, and I truly believe we're going to have a remarkable and transformational year. Does anyone have any questions for me other than what's in my bag? Because that's what I'm wondering about.
I am curious about that, but are there other questions or comments before we get to that? Okay, take it away.
Okay. So this summer I read a book about transformational leadership, and it was a fable all around like beekeeping. And so today, actually, my admin team and my administrative support team went to Pollinate, Minnesota. They have a beehive at JD Rivers Park in Minneapolis. And so we actually got to put on the bee stuff and hold bees. And so I've only been at a couple board meetings, but I feel like they're long. So I have a couple honey sticks for you all. And I also have this little message that it's a little sneak peek at workshop week next week, but it just says anyone thinks that they are too small to make a difference has never met a honeybee. So all of the staff will get this on Monday. So if anyone's watching, sorry. So there's a lot of people here. I only did 15, but so if you want to take one and pass it down. Yeah, there's next.
Thank you so much. Your
Yeah.
thoughtfulness just about how you're starting the year is really beautiful. And I appreciate knowing a little bit more about your journey to the seat of principal of North Education Center. I think it's incredible that you have all of the experiences that you have. And I'm really grateful and excited to come back to North this year and
Yes.
to see you there.
Please do. Our emphasis is family engagement and community engagement. So there'll be lots of stuff going on this year for you to come in and see.
Cool. Are there any other comments or questions?
So what's the name of the book?
It's called The Beekeeper. Yep. So, and then it's like transformational leadership.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I also joke to my admin team, like, I know our mascot's the Jaguars and we're not changing it, but the theme is all about bees and supporting the hive.
You could just have a couple bees, hovering above the jaguar.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring it all together.
Just welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Beautiful.
All right. Thank you so
Good
much
deal.
for being here with
Thank
us.
you.
Good luck next week and
Yeah.
into the school year. We'll see
Awesome.
you
Thank
soon.
you.
We move to the superintendent's report where we have a number of really important items. So I'm going to turn it right over to Superintendent Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board and our community. I have good news today, and that is the interest of Minnetonka Public Schools becoming a member of District 287. So over the summer, I met with the administrative team in Minnetonka, and our team went over to our finance and special education, came on over, and we had discussion about rejoining District 287. new leadership in both districts, and definitely we could be a benefit and support them, and they too would be a benefit to our district and support the work that we're doing in the West Metro to serve our unique students and families. So we met, we talked about membership. The superintendent sent me a letter of intent. And then the timing is, well, one, we didn't have a board meeting in July, but we had it in August. But really it was a student-focused timing in the sense of if, if membership was approved by the board, that we could start our families at the first day of school and our students at the first day of school within our district. And so that's a little bit of the rush of the timing. The Minnetonka School Board voted on the MOU. It's the MOU from 2016, and they approved it unanimously on 8/18. And so today, the administration is recommending that you consider Minnetonka to become a member of District 287.
And with that, I believe there's a copy of the MOU at each person's seat so that you have it and can see it in front of you. And certainly willing to take questions or comments before we take this step, though I know that people have also had a chance to have individual conversations. So this certainly is not the first time that we are all hearing about it, thinking about it, or talking about it. Are there any comments or questions? Jenna.
I just had a question about the process. Will we be expecting a representative from the Minnetonka School Board at our next meeting, or are they going to wait until January when they go through their organization process?
So according to our MOU, there are official members within 30 days of the board approval. And so we would be asking in 30 days or within a month that we have an additional board member. So it will add, we'll have 12 board members as part of that. Yeah.
Looking to see if there are other questions. I will share in conversations that I have been able to have about this. I appreciate that this is a great example of putting students first and student need first, and our ability as a district to provide what our mission statement says, innovative specialized services to really support our young people. And I am grateful that we've come to an agreement under the terms of this MOU to really be able to live out that mission statement in this really important way. So I just wanted to say that. And obviously, pending our vote here momentarily, we'll look forward to welcoming Minnetonka to the table. A logistical question. The way that this is phrased, I assume that this is a resolution, but I wanted to check.
Roll call.
Roll call vote.
Okay, got it. With that, is there a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement between Intermediate District 287 and Minnetonka School District 276?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ann Casey and a second by Michelle Kuntz. Any further discussion? As this is a roll call vote, our clerk, Shannon Andreessen, will poll the board.
Thank you. Shannon Andreessen votes aye. Renee Bowman,
Yes.
Crystal Brackey.
Aye.
Ann Casey,
Aye.
Ruthie Dallas not here. Sarah Johansson,
Yes.
Michelle Coons,
Aye.
Heidi Marty,
Aye.
Jackie Mosqueda Jones,
Aye.
Kim Ross,
Aye.
and it passes unanimously.
Wonderful. Welcome to Minnetonka. And excited to work collaboratively across our two districts moving forward. So back
Thank
to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm excited to have our collaboration. I know our special education team is. All right, the next thing that was on the report is our strategic plan update. Ooh, it's been fun. It's been a fun summer. You should also have a copy of the final report in front of you, paper copy. Some of the slides are small, so this gives you a little help in visuals. So just a reminder that this is the final report of the engagement period. And so from January till June, We participated in gathering input from many key audiences regarding where should we go in the next 5 years. And so this is a summary of that, which developed our themes. Just gotta make sure I'm finding the right spot. Oh, look at that. Okay, thank you, Wendy. Just a little background information regarding our strategic plan. There was, our previous strategic plan ended December 31st of 2020. And with COVID and the change of a new superintendent, we have been working off of strategic priorities that were aligned to that plan. And the four strategic priorities are racial equity, trauma responsive and healing centered practices, evidence-based instruction, and employee well-being. So we are looking for a plan and it will launch in January of 2024. Just a reminder of the key audiences that were identified to provide input. And overall, we provided 67 opportunities for engagement that included large groups, surveys, retreats, community meetings, and individual meetings. The outcome of the engagement information for those that participated in one or more engagement opportunities in combining our community partners, parents, and caregivers, 37% of our parents, community partners, and caregivers participated. 89% of our member district representatives in finance, special education, as well as superintendents and board members. We had 77% of staff participate. And when we broke it down between licensed and non-licensed, we saw an equal representation between the two. And we had 45% of our students engaged in an activity. We wanted to look at the racial demographics as we were going through the engagement period. We really did want to make sure that we were elevating voice and we were mindful about race and opportunities of engagement. So on the graph on the right-hand side, as you look at the screen, it says all staff by race. And so that is, and you'll also see it in your report, our racial demographics for all of our staff. On the left, it's the staff, the 77% who participated in an engagement activity. And what you see is that there is a parallel representation. And that is what we were looking for, that we were getting a cross sample of input from all of our staff. When we look at those same racial demographics by students, on the screen, the graph to your right is our student racial demographics. And on the left are the 47% of students that participated. I might have got that percentage wrong, but of the students that participated in activity. And again, you will see similar representation of our students that attend intermediate district 2 to 7. So we felt good about that. We were hoping for a little bit more engagement in the amount of numbers participating, but we do feel like we had a good sample size as part of the input. Once the input was collected, we held a retreat on June 15th. Around 40 people of the key audiences that were on the list prior participated in the retreat. So we did have a sampling of all the people, of all of the positions and key audiences that participated in the input sessions. And we developed some overarching themes. So the teams looked at the data by families or by staff or by students, brought themes up, and then we gathered all those themes and went higher. And the 3 themes that came out consistently were achieving academic success, promoting social emotional learning, and cultivating equity and inclusion. But it was bigger than that. So when we were looking at the data, the who, and this is going to be a common theme in our district, the who's for who? What does academic success mean for our students, for our staff, for our families? And you saw this repeating, what does social emotional learning mean for our students, our staff, and our families? So we saw this theme and said, we just can't stick with the themes. We need to make statements aligned with the who in our themes. So the next slide is an example of the who. you'll see a pattern in our statements underneath the theme. So the theme under achieving academic success. When we reach 2029, students will meet their individual academic goals. Staff will demonstrate the knowledge and skills to provide culturally responsive education. Families and caregivers are empowered through collaborative partnerships and resources to support students in reaching their academic goals. So when we looked at it, we really had to identify, there's an action item for this district to support key audiences of the students, the staff, and the families. And so we will have work groups that will define what does culturally relevant or responsive instruction mean in District 287. So the deeper dive of what does this mean and what does this look like and what does this feel like will go into some work groups. But that is the overarching theme and statement for academic success. When we look at social emotional learning, it's students in 2029, students thrive emotionally and socially. Staff cultivate a positive, safe, and healing learning environment for each other and students. Families, caregivers are empowered through collaborative partnerships and resources to support students in reaching their social emotional goals. And then for the last one of equity inclusion, students have equitable access to educational opportunities and resources within District 287. Staff create a culture that celebrates diversity and advances inclusion. And families, caregivers feel welcomed, heard, and valued in our district. So those themes and those statements are what rose from all of the input that we received. And when we said at the very end of the retreat, we had them do a vision board. And we said, if this was all going to occur, what would 2029 look like? And this is a word of all of the words that came out through either the posters or conversation. And the biggest thing was connected and blooming and knowing that the journey may be rocky, but we'll get there. Questions about what I've shared regarding the themes and the statements?
I'm sort of looking at Renee because you were there at the library
I
as
was
part of
there.
this. So yeah, I would love for you to share or ask questions.
Well, first of all, I'm very impressed by the simplicity of it because I don't even want to go into it. I'm just very impressed by the simplicity of it. I'm impressed that there are action items in its simplicity. And it is amazing to kind of see what the action of that whole day was synthesized into. And sort of just giving us a general overview. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense from what I saw. So I don't have any questions right now. But I'm impressed with the document in front of me. So thank you.
Are there other comments or questions? Janet?
I just want to say I'm particularly impressed with the amount of students that participated in this. I think that often that's lacking in settings like this, to think of the students and that each of the themes, students were up at the top. And even the underlying themes for the adults in the community was student-centered and focused. I find that wonderful and think it's probably a result of the transformative work that's been happening in 287. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I'll just lift up and say thank you for the intentionality and the inclusiveness. I think both as we look at the demographics and making sure that there is a cross representation, the numbers, it's hard to get. I mean, it's hard sometimes to get people, but then to make sure that it falls in, and then even in the word chart, right? And to see Rocky and to see connected really shows the validity and kind of the honoring the truth of and the understanding of what the journey is going to look like, that it's not all rosy and clean cut, but there's really a commitment to being real. And so thank you for that intentionality and focus.
I'm just so excited. And I, unlike Renee and Crystal, I was not in the room, but I've done this before and I know how hard it is. So like the amount of engagement you had, I know you kind of said like, we wish we had more.
Yeah.
This is amazing. I mean, like if we had, I don't know, maybe this isn't true in other districts, but I feel like in my district, if somebody said we had, half of all of our students participate and 80% of all of our staff, like that is amazing. So serious kudos. And the statements, or what are we calling them?
Statements.
Statements, okay. When I read these and I mean, you kind of said this and it like almost sounds silly to say like the grammar of this matters, but like the grammar of this really matters.
Mhm.
And it's really intentional that the goals are for students, student-centered. The students are going to meet their academic goals, but they don't do that alone, right? And so the other two things are how does our staff enable that? And then how do our families and caregivers support that? But that's their role, right? Their role isn't to have the knowledge and skills to do it, right? The students also don't have to do, that's the staff. So I love how each group has their role within each one of these and how, like Renee said, they're kind of simple, but they're super powerful. And it's very easy to see that every word was very intentional. And I think that's really difficult. So I'm super excited to see what comes and like January 1, like get going on this. It's fantastic. So thank you.
For that.
Yeah, I would say they're probably deceptively simple.
Yeah.
Right, so
Fortunate.
now, I mean, and so when I look at it, kudos for the process, but kudos for kind of taking three big things on, all of which are necessary and inextricably linked. But it's, you've got 5 years, so.
Great team. So the engagement none of this is done in isolation. So I really do have to acknowledge everybody on the team. And we have our project management team is Camille, Juanine, Elizabeth, Kiara, and Tanya. And we spent a lot of time together this year, and besides meeting and planning, prepping, but also dividing and conquering so we could get the engagement. And then May, everybody stepped up and we had district-wide days where we could participate in engagement. And so I just have to acknowledge the team in that and the team and the heavy lifting that we're going to do to get this done in 5 years, right? So, but we're in. It's exciting.
Yeah, I will just share as well. I echo everything that has been said, and it leaves me fired up and thinking about also the reality that this sits with and saying this is based on where we are. This is based on sort of the truth that was shared in this process about where we need to go, not the aspirational place that we wish that we were, and the even more aspirational place we want to be in 5 years, but that this actually feels ambitious and realistic, I think is so important. And it makes me really excited to think about the clarity that this provides for us as a board as well about what we should be doing to make sure that we are aligned to these areas and that we are advancing these things in our work. So I think it provides direction and clarity for us that we need to hold ourselves to as well.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
It was a lot of wordsmithing and a lot of feedback loops with different groups. And I just appreciated the action forward and really entering into brave conversations about where we are around equity and inclusion or any of these areas to say, let's be honest, what can we do in 5 years? And so it's a good conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a couple more. Yes, Jackie and then Michelle.
Takes me a while to process.
Absolutely.
When I look at these themes, I feel as a 30+ year teacher, I feel like they've hit on the heart.
Yeah.
The heart of what education really is, these three pieces working together in it. And as a teacher, it feels very validating for what I've been doing for, my 30 years and appreciative that we have it in such amazing clarity and that it came from everybody in the district.
Yeah.
Wants that same thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so along those lines, I'm thinking about how we came this point. And it's really heartwarming for me to sit here amongst all of you and think, oh, that's where we were. This is where we are. And a lot of hard work was done. And so shoot me if I'm out of bounds here. But one of the bad language choices, sorry. Just, um, the, no, I lost it due to the bad language.
Sorry.
No.
You were saying where we've been and where we're going.
Yes, oh, and with a bit of a caveat, the mission. I haven't heard it talked about. And I'm curious because a lot of wordsmithing went into that. A lot. And a lot of stuff has come through here as well. So I'm just asking, are we agreed to keep the mission?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. That should be part of the report. It was unanimous. No one wanted to change the mission. And so everybody felt even with these themes and statements or key areas, it's still aligned. One thing I will say is then we looked at the belief statements and said, do the belief statements still align? And even when we were having dialogue about what does it mean, those statements, what do they really mean? We had a lot of dialogue about, well, what's the underlying belief in order to make that real? And then using that to look at our statements and said, we need to adjust our statements. And so there will be a work group, when each work group, focus area group meets, they're gonna talk about not only what words need to be defined, but then what's the underlying belief in order to make this happen? And those will start merging into our new belief statement, aligned with the statements and the themes. Excellent. Yeah, but no one wanted to change the mission.
I apologize.
Any other comments or questions? Yes. I don't have a mic near me, which might be part of the problem. Let me get ours closer, and this might also be making it more difficult. Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, any other final comments or questions? All right, with that, back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it leads into my next one, which is my annual goal. And just like last year, this school year, my annual goal is continuing to work around the strategic plan. It's not done yet. And so my goal will be that by June 30th, 2024, you should have a piece of paper or connection up with my goal. Intermediate School District 287, the strategic plan will be finalized, approved, and the goals outlined from January 2024 to June 2024 will be accomplished. So just a reminder, we're going to finalize the strategic plan. There'll be action items under each of those statements and those key themes. And then we'll be activating the strategic plan and have action items from January to June. So it's just a 6-month. And what we'll also be bringing to you is next year's goals. Because really what next year's goals will be the big goals. So you'll have both at the same time. But what we're looking at those 6 months is saying, what do we need to do foundationally so we can launch big on July 1, 2024. So you'll get a 1.5 years worth of goals. And then in this process, the teams will draft the action item goals, annual goals. And then I'll bring a draft to the board here for November for a first reading. Approval of the strategic plan on December 14th board meeting. Just a reminder, we only have one board meeting in those months, and that's why those days. And then at the end of the year, we'll come back with a report to say, how did we do in 6 months of implementing it? Questions or considerations of my goals?
It's very clear, and this is a requested action item of us this evening, is to approve the goals for 2023, 2024 as presented this evening, with the caveat that there will be much more to come at the beginning of 2024.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Shannon Andreessen and a second by Sarah Johansson. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye, and the superintendent goals are approved. And we move to our instructional report. Very excited to welcome Elizabeth Lodge Rogers, who is going to do this presentation for us. And again, we have a packet in front of us that we can also use as a reference. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Chair Baraki, and thank you, board members. Happy to be here, Superintendent Dowd. We just talked a little bit about the future, and we're going to take a step back and just review our accomplishments within our strategic priorities for this past school year. We really, I think, have had a good year of work, and we're kind of embarking, bridging, if you will, our work into the new strategic plan that will be approved in December. So we're at that point. Marcy mentioned already racial equity, trauma responsive and healing centered practices, evidence-based instruction, and employee well-being were our 4 priority areas. I'm sure you recognize the graphic that shows student outcomes at the center, and we continue with our focus on students and how do we work together to ensure that we can meet the unique learning needs of our students, as our mission statement says. So in the area of racial equity, a lot of work, and our director, Kiara Zachary Watkins came in with lots to do. And as a part of that, we had increased some resources around staffing, which allowed to have a coordinator hired. A district-wide racial equity, you'll recall, was completed, and that information was shared with you, and that's kind of setting our trajectory for future work. And really exciting were some actions, and one of those was a student conference that was held for our students, kind of thinking about leadership and entrepreneurship on the college campus. So lots of work happening there and work to come. Reframing and restructuring that department's been part of our work that has been happening, and then continued emphasis and work on professional development. In terms of trauma responsive and healing centered practices, our executive director, Dr. Allen, has worked with us on a lot of work with her team and across the district in many areas of student supports, staff supports, family engagement, a lot of work around safety and reviewing and revising and training our protocols, but really professional development, and support. If I were just to kind of sum it up. And I think as we look forward, I know that we're excited with how this work dovetails nicely and continues as we look at those themes coming out of the strategic planning process, with that focus on social emotional learning and thinking about our students, our staff, and supporting families and coming together that ongoing support is there, ongoing professional learning, ongoing work on helping us kind of get processes that supports a little more seamless so that Dr. Allen isn't having to do quite all the heavy lifting that she's been doing in this area. So it's been a good year, and we last year was a good year, and we look forward to this year. Evidence-based instruction. Ben McGrath, our executive director in that area, leads this work, and we have really continued the work on the data dashboard and having those data and those tools available for helping us really inform instruction. I think renewed and even more focused commitment to literacy, particularly looking at the science of reading and dovetailing that work, and that will continue on into next year. We continue to work on our assessment protocols for screening and supporting progress monitoring. And that all works nicely actually with the work we're doing in the area of SEL work and that as well. So there's a lot of overlap, as we know, and that work is happening clearly. I think an important change for this coming year that all of us, but Ben certainly has been leading with his team, are thinking about our instructional coaches with some alignment across three key themes: literacy, culturally responsive teaching, and then standards aligned curriculum. So those are some of the things that we'll be honing in on this coming year. And then in terms of employee well-being, this work, we have a district-wide well-being action team that kind of supports and provides a framework and direction for the district in terms of activities and supports and dissemination of information and resources. And we've continued that work. Those are representatives from the well-being action teams from departments and our schools and different programs. That we continue and also look forward to thinking about how that work's going to dovetail with how our strategic priority themes are coming together and how we continue to support our employees and making sure we're all ready in here. We have wonderful staff and we have great resources. It's making sure we're there to support and serve our students as they move forward. So lots happening, lots happening now. We've had a couple weeks ago, we had our school improvement planning process with our school-wide teams, embarked on our literacy as our overarching theme related to student outcomes, and that work continues. So we continue working around really focus on student outcomes. What do our students need? How can we support? And as you saw, as we move into this strategic planning, excited. Any questions that I or my colleagues who are here might be able to help me with?
Thank you. Well, we continue to try to find the source of the feedback, I assume. Questions or comments? Jenna, go ahead.
I just wanted to say this report looks beautiful. So kudos to whoever laid it out, and the content within it, I think, is really informative and it's nice. So thanks for all the work, collective work that probably went into
Yeah,
it.
lots of collaboration and all of us and our wonderful communications team. So thank
Well
you.
done. Thank you.
And go ahead.
Just that it's, we.
No, you're not done yet.
And it's just that we just talked about what's coming up, and I think it really matters. This doesn't feel like that doesn't feel like a departure from this. It feels like a deepening, a broadening, all of those things. So that's just super exciting. No, sorry, I didn't mean.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Director Casey. I agree. I think it feels it makes sense, right? This feels like it's kind of coming together. So.
All right, yes, go ahead, Sarah.
More, thank you. Thank you, team. You were busy and you made a commitment to be even busier in this year. And so it's evident that students were at the center and that was what you were doing every single day. And just thank you so much for your continued focused efforts. Really phenomenal. Thanks.
I actually do have a question, but it could be one that the superintendent may answer instead. It's up to you. I am curious how this is shared with others outside of the seat. Who sees this? How do we communicate this? Because I hope that we are not the only.
Madam Chair? Yep. No, we are not the only audience, and I think that's one of the things that came out of our racial equity audit is how are we sharing things we're doing? So besides on our website, how are we connecting and trying to ensure that everybody has access? And so that is part of the work that we are doing and letting staff know. Not saying that staff may read it or not read it, I'm not sure, but working on different ways of communicating the work that's going on, especially as we launch the new strategic plan. How do we ensure that we're going out back into the audiences and letting them know? For the staff perspective, I will be doing that on our opening day.
Great.
And then we have to talk about our other audiences, but it's an area of progress that we have besides, putting on the website, which is lovely. We just need a little bit more outreach.
Great. I'm really excited to hear that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, now you can. We move to the Business Services and Labor Relations Report, which this evening contains one item, approval of our routine monthly finance report. So May Hawkins is making her way to the podium.
Good evening, Chair Brockie, board members, and district administrators. So this is our June, which is both an end of quarter and our end of year. So it's our formal report. Just a quick reminder that these June amounts that are in this report are on a cash basis. And so the June amounts will continue to change up to until the audit's done, right? So we'll continue to do payables and receivables. And so these amounts will change. So we'll start out with revenues. Our revenues were at 83.4% of budget, which is slightly below the prior year. And our expenditures were at 95.1% of budget, which is between our prior 2 years cash basis amounts. So when I'm saying between prior years, that's the cash basis from June of those prior years that I'm comparing it to. So we're comparing apples and apples. Okay, our cash was slightly lower than the last 2 years' June's balances. Our investments totaled $15,409,865 for our general fund investments, and our LTFM bond was at $4,523,351, which will fund our LTFM projects for the next 2 years. The general fund investment level is also slightly lower than last June, like the cash. On our students, the student ADM for our ALC programs peaked in November at 233, and they were at 225 at year end. That was 2 ADMs above the budget for the year and 1 ADM above where we were last year. Our Northern Star online program, the final June ADMs were 958, which was 68.74 ADMs higher than budget. The NSO supplemental program revenue is generated upon credit completion at 88% of the full ADMs included in the board's report. So the revenues for the year will be generated on the equivalent of 878 ADMs. Our Career and Technical Pathways program peaked in their enrollment in January at 64 ADMs, and at the end of the year, they had 62 ADMs, which is 15 ADMs below their budget and 16 lower than last year. Our special education programs, their ADMs peaked in May at 469. At the end of the year, we were at 464, which is 6 ADM higher than our budget and 25 higher than last year. And our care and treatment enrollment also peaked in May at 114 ADMs and ended the year with 112, which is 17 ADMs below what was budgeted and pretty much exactly the same ADMs as we had last year. Our donations for the month of June included non-cash donations of a Riften Air Activity Chair and Gate Trainer for itinerant services and cash donations of $24 for West Suburban Summer School. Our total donations for the year totaled $13,724, which is lower than the previous 2 years. Are there any questions before the board approves the June financial report?
Okay, any questions or comments?
Does the lower amount in the care and treatment, this is probably Elizabeth's question, but or Tanya, does that mean we had spots that weren't filled? I mean, I find that hard to believe. It's true.
Part part of it is that our programs, our partners had difficulties finding therapists.
Okay,
So then they could only serve
got
what they
it.
had therapists for. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. Cause I'm like, yeah, there's not enough spots in the state. Oh, yeah, okay.
Such an unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was just curious. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just
Gonna-
a quick question about the donations. They went down. Do you know by how much?
I had that down here too. Well, last year, with the February 1, we had a lot of donations with our the February 1 shooting. So it'd be difficult to compare year to year. So last year's donations were around 20 grand. But that included a lot of donations for South Education Center.
So is what we're reporting this year? Is that more typical?
It's still below what we had before that, right? So they're usually somewhere between $18,000 and $25,000 is what we usually have in donations.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any, we could entertain a motion to approve the June 2023 monthly finance report.
Second.
We have a motion by Heidi Marty and a second by Michelle Coons. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye and the finance report is approved. Thank you, May.
very much.
We move to the board business section of the agenda. And first up, under policy review and revision, we're gonna look at a first read of BOO 200, which I just love that acronym. And while we took a 2-month break from board meetings, we actually had 3 meetings here in the boardroom with the 3 board members who have been part of our policy ad hoc committee and several members of our team, including the superintendent, Juanine, Kevin, Kiara, Elizabeth, and then a few other people who are with us for one meeting along the way. So huge appreciation to everybody who has helped us get to this point. I think the superintendent is going to share some of the work that we've done and what we have before us tonight as a first read, just to bring the rest of you up to speed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board members, so you have 2 items in the packet. You have a policy summary and then actually the policy itself. I'm going to start with the summary. So as the ad hoc committee discussed the process for policy review, we thought we should start with BOO 200, which actually is about policy development, adoption, implementation, and review. So the conversation that we had, you're going to get for any kind of policy review is you will always get a summary that goes along with the policy. And that summary will talk about the process. And you'll see this again in the process. We're talking about the who. So you're going to get a theme. I'm going to keep bringing it up is because when we looked at policies, we really talked about getting the voices of the subgroups and key audiences that are impacted by the policy, that they are able to participate in recommendations for language changes. And the way that we would go about that is that the superintendent would connect with the team And that the equity department and the superintendent department and administration would look at whose voice needs to be at the table and then have a subgroup that will work on that policy. They'll review MSBA's model policy, our current policy, also the equity audit. If you remember in the equity audit, there was identified policies that needed to be reviewed. And that group will use an equity review protocol, which will develop the back part of the summary, the equity impact. So in the summary, you'll see an overview of the process, the language changes, and you'll always see an equity impact in the back. And that tool will pull out information about who's benefiting from this policy, who is not. We also had brave conversations about sometimes it's in statute. And so what we have to talk about is if this is the statute, what is our role maybe in a procedure, proactive procedure to support maybe voices that are not in the space or anybody that may be negatively impacted by statutory language. And so there, we still own a piece to it and as well as follow statute. That committee subgroup would develop the policy, bring it back to the ad hoc committee. The ad hoc committee would look at the recommendations, review kind of this cover sheet and the equity impact, and then also have a kind of a reactive or post equity review tool for more of that checks and balances. And then once the ad hoc committee is completed with the policy, it'll move forward to the board for further readings. So as I look at the summary changes, I verbally shared what are the language changes that we put in the policy. So if we go to the summary of changes and look at both of them, you'll identify like Roman numeral 3, the change is due to an explanation of why the change is being recommended. Just changing the title to combine the development and review process. In the development and review continued under numeral 3, just a title change and new language to indicate who can propose a policy and who can determine it moving forward. So that's the other thing that was missing in our policy is that a board member, a family, a student can ask for a policy to be reviewed and or recommend a new policy. And so we want to really open up that availability. So that's the change in language. If I keep going, the continued language in red is about acknowledging that the equity review protocol is part of our review policy before coming to the board. As I move down to effective date, this actually came out of our board retreat, that when the board retreat, you guys, the board members actually reviewed this policy and there was inconsistency in language. And so vote of the quorum of the board was recommended for consistency throughout. So that was changed. And then emergency conditions, new language was added. It's in MSBA and was not in our policy. And this language is really important to add because it gives the school board authority to determine what constitutes emergency. And you all know we had a lot of legislative changes. And so you can determine that a new legislative change doesn't have to go through, can be considered an emergency, and doesn't have to go through the reading process. So this is allowing you in that decision-making, and we will bring it up when we bring the new policies forward that are due to legislative statutory changes, that you have the authority to determine that in that space. And then lastly, it is about the superintendent's role. And I'll be playing an active role with Juanine in looking at our policies. In full transparency, we got behind in the review process due to COVID, and now we have a whole lot of new ones that we need to consider due to the legislative changes. So it'll be an active year on policies. And there are some policies that need to be reviewed on an annual basis that have not been currently part of our practice. And putting them in this policy would cement that that's a requirement. So that's a summary of the language changes. And if we go to the impact, things that were discussed, why we are looking at based on the equity audit, the who is at the table, why that subcommittee is so important. Again, I explained that, but it'll be part of our practice. We also are using an equity tool, a review tool. Equity, district-wide equity department and team is working on that. And then one thing we also talked about is if your district follows MSBA language tightly, sometimes it's not as accessible. What does that mean? One thing District 287 has a history of is making sure the language is accessible. And so we agreed that we are going to follow the intent around MSBA, but make the language more accessible for our audiences. And a process-wise, talking about, which we shared on the report a little bit, is how, when we have a new change in policy, how does our staff know? How do our students know? How does our families and caregivers know? And so we were talking about a communication protocol that will help share the changes. So this is the first reading. Anything to add, Chair Becky?
Only that I realized I mentioned the district staff that were part of the process and neglected to share that Jackie, Kim, and I were the 3 board members who have been part of the process. So my bad. And I would turn it to the 2 of you, actually, if there's anything that you would like to share about work we've done or build on what the superintendent just shared.
That was a very good summary. Pretty exactly right on.
I would just, the only thing I would add is that what we've also talked about is, so we're changing the policy on policy development. And then after we go through this series of other policy updates as a function of what was recommended by the equity audit and so forth, we may end up revisiting this policy to say, okay, did we learn anything? Is there something we want to change or incorporate based on the experience we just had?
Absolutely. Just to add to that, thank you for reminding me. Knowing that the voices are really important and that committee work is important, we may not be running through policies as fast as what you might be used to in your home districts, because it is intentional that we're getting that input and bringing it forward. So it's just an added step that may not be part of your current practice that will delay moving these through a little bit.
When we agreed as an ad hoc committee that we would concentrate, or that the district would concentrate on the legislative changes and the particular policies that, wonder if it's my microphone because it feels really loud to me. Sorry, distraction. And the policies that the equity audit identified. So those are like the 2 higher priority.
Are there questions or comments for us?
I feel like that's all of those tonight, but I really like these changes and I like the focus, especially that there's a process for equity analysis built into the policy on policies, which is my favorite policy. I did want to note though, and want to make sure that this is something that we as a board feel comfortable with, is that in our general statement, we say that we believe that the creation of policies is the board's most important function. And then I feel like we then say the superintendent is responsible for every part of it. So just wondering if there is a way, as you're going through that reiteration process that you were talking about, Kim, to maybe bring some of that responsibility back on the board.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think I would actually, my response to that is, personally, I believe that our most important function is the governance tied to the policy. It's not the creation of the policy. We have input in and a role to play in creation and in approving, but really it's the governance that I feel like is our role. And so I think maybe that's where that misalignment is coming in. And we might have different points of view about that, but you're right, that is an important thing to actually reconcile.
And I just also want to make sure that I know that superintendent of this district in particular has a lot on their plate and make sure that that's a comfortable heavy lift that's being placed on you and your staff. Yeah, so I just noticed certain pieces that could maybe be brought back to the board. And then wanting to know if we as a board feel like we should incorporate not only a process for equity analysis, but for incorporating student voice into this process. That was just a thought I had.
And so one of the things we talked about, Shannon, is there's policy and then there's accompanying process. So kind of trying to lay out at a high level, here's what this needs to look like and include, and having that being separate and apart from a process that describes, here's how we're going to do this. Because how we're going to do it will vary based on which voices need to be in the room for any particular policy. So, and then the comment you made about creation of policies. So I'll just throw out a suggestion from the standpoint of one of the things we talked about was keeping the language accessible to laymen, if you will. So maybe just saying the board believes that policy work is the board's most important function. Because like the concept of policy governance is like not a commonly understood construct to a lot of people.
Go ahead, Ann.
I don't.
Yeah, I
Is
mean-
it the most important? Is the
Yeah.
board members in agreement on that is the most important function of the board?
I don't think we probably are.
Yeah.
So that could be worth some follow-up conversation as well. And I don't want to lose track of what you said about students specifically.
Yeah.
Because I think it just wasn't called out, but students will be part of many of these subgroups in the policies that directly affect them. So that it's built into that already.
Yeah, I mean, it says the superintendent will gather key audiences impacted by the policy.
Yeah.
So it doesn't call out students or staff or families explicitly, which it certainly could.
Great. Michelle, go ahead.
Thinking back, I remember we had a lot of talking about policy versus procedure.
Mhm.
And that we had, some of our policies were just enormous, 50 pages. So we asked Ann Becker at the time to bring us clean examples
Yep.
that we then use. So I'm hoping that that you don't have to throw everything out, but it's a lot of work, it really is. So thank you, you who volunteered or were volunteered.
I wonder if it would be more clear to say policy implementation, like in parentheses, say procedure, because it's our job to do the policies and it's the district's job to do the procedures that are attached to it. That's what I think policy implementation is delegated to the superintendent means. So it's
Yeah.
not like, I don't see it as that way, but because of the way it's worded, maybe that's not as helpful.
Can I seek clarification in preparation for the second reading? When you're talking about policy implementation, you're under number 2, that last sentence?
Mhm.
Okay, just.
Renee, yes.
Oh, sorry, that just doesn't make sense to me, but I'll think on it.
Okay, we'll come back. Renee, go ahead.
Well, and just to add that probably what's important to the policy piece of it is that it really should facilitate governance on our part. And that might be a greater step towards clarity, that it's through these policies that we're able, the policies will facilitate positive governance, student voice, all the things that student achievement, that kind of thing. So maybe that helps to reconcile it a little better. That it's the importance of it is that we should be able to govern more effectively and better because of the policies that we establish.
So I think it's, that general statement of policy, the first paragraph around belief, back to this, like, how do we make sure that the belief statements align with what our intentions are, is an area to specifically look at and really try to figure out what are the beliefs that we want to make clear in this, and that they reflect our collective belief as individual board members to the best of our ability. So that's great. This is exactly why we have first reads. Are there other comments or questions that people want to share now? Yes, Heidi.
Is the 7, is it a change that we're going to be reviewing those areas, those 3 policies annually? Is that a change? Yes. Okay. And that was decided by the group in the 3, this new group. Okay.
Well, and that we are supposed to be
Yeah.
reviewing them annually.
That's right.
It's required. That's okay. That's, I guess that was my main question.
Yeah.
We haven't been doing it and it
Yes.
has been required. Okay. Got
And
it.
so
Yep.
that we need to be in practice and we want to make sure that the policy also ensures that we are taking that stuff. So both.
So I have a question on that line too. I think there's a number of 400 policies in HR too that are supposed to be reviewed on an annual basis. And so is there just a heads up that there's probably some, or is that 7? No, 700 is fine. It's at 700. You have 400. I think there's a number of 400 HR related stuff that maybe needs an annual review as well. We might have a list, you probably have them, but Wayzata might have a list too of all the things that we feel like we review on an annual basis.
And so one thing I'll check is just to see, like sometimes districts review policies on an annual basis and then what's statutes. What I've been following is just any new language in statute, but I'll double check.
I think some of them like protection and things are. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, look forward to continuing our work as an ad hoc committee. And again, huge appreciation for all the staff because as was it you, Shannon, who said this? Like there's so much work and time that the staff is doing to both prepare us for our meetings, but to do a lot of the writing, a lot of the thinking around how the equity audit really does fit into this, and then actually doing the work. As you said, Michelle, this is a district that really relies on procedures. And so we want to honor that, and we need to be really clear about the implications of any changes that we make. So thank you for that. All right, we will come back to this for a second read in the future. We will find out if it's going to be the next meeting or 2 meetings from now, depending on how much time we feel like we need to thoughtfully do that. So just a few things that I'll share in the rest of the board business section of the agenda. Wanted to point your attention to the calendars in our board packet, just so that you can see the dates for our board meetings for the rest of the year. And the schedule for the Get on the Bus events and the breakfast with our local 2209 partners have been set for the 2023-2024 school year. So those are all available. I'll just call out the first 2. Tuesday, October 17th is the Get on the Bus visit to Ann Bremer. And then Tuesday, October 24th is the first breakfast with local 2209. And Juanita is who we go to RSVP, so she makes sure that we are all accounted for. But yeah, what else would you like to share with us? Oh, okay. Thank you. No, I'm so glad that you said that because I was in that conversation and I totally defaulted to breakfast. And I think those of us that were there were all excited about not having the 7 a.m. meeting that was increasingly challenging to wake up for, be present for, to be at the beginning of the school day for our 2209 staff. So it is going to be lunch with 2209. Great, thank you so much. 1 p.m. I'm gonna do AMSD stuff real quick, then we'll go to once around the table, and then we'll get to our closed session. So I'm slightly just moving things around in the board
Can I ask
business
a quick
section.
question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do we have the school board calendar from January on?
I believe so, as far as when board meetings take place.
Yes. Can we put
If
that
you
on board
click
list?
on the August 24th, 2023 board event calendar.
Okay.
It goes into 2024. Yeah. For AMSD, the only two things that I just wanted to share is that I'm very excited that Marcus Hill is the new chair of AMSD. He is from the West St. Paul Mendota Heights Egan School District and is going to be a fantastic chair for the next year. And the next AMSD board meeting is September 8th. And it's one that tends to be very popular because it's the presentation from the people who run Morris Leatherman, the polling company.
Gotta
See
go
the
to that
noises.
one. Yeah.
Everybody loves
Just
it.
putting it on the calendar right now.
Yeah, like they just give really interesting insights into what they're hearing from community members, and not just about education, but about their views on all sorts of things and how it affects schools. So yes, September 8th, I believe, is their annual date with AMSD. So I wanted you to be aware of that. Now we'll do once around the table, which is just if there are any announcements or things that board members would like to share with each other.
I just want to thank you for your service on AMSD.
Thank you.
It's been you're a great chair.
Thank you. I
know,
appreciate that.
We're excited for Marcus as well.
Yes, I enjoyed it and I'm so excited for him to be our next chair. I wanted to share just specifically the best of luck to our current board members who are running for re-election in their home districts this fall, Heidi and Shannon. And then to the districts who also might have other items on the ballot, which is true for us in Richfield. And I don't know, is it true for any others? Oh, quite a few. All right. So let the campaigning begin. Anything else? Okay, the next item is a closed session, which is allowable under Minnesota Statute 13D.03, where the school board may hold a closed meeting to consider strategy for labor negotiations. Want to make clear to anybody viewing that this will be the last item that we do this evening. So after the closed session, we will come back to public meeting and immediately adjourn. So the live stream is going to end here, but just want to assure you will not be missing any public business from here on out. Is there a motion to go into closed session under statute 13D.03? Second. We have a motion by Heidi Marty and a second by Kim Ross. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye. It is 7:46. We will move into closed session, which we will begin after a brief pause to clear the room. Thank you so much, everybody. See you at our next meeting on Thursday, September 14th.